Test. Well, good afternoon, and I've got to take out my cheat sheet because I didn't print it, but I figured nobody will hold that against me using it electronic. So let's start off with the, obviously, Matt, how did you get started in Bitcoin?
Well, before I get to that story, I did want to recognize Dan and Farouk for putting on Cryptolina. I think this is a very important platform. And these platforms have to happen locally, like here in North Carolina. I've been investing and starting companies, technology companies in North Carolina for about 10 years, and it's great to see this kind of energy. My geographic background is mostly in the Triad, which is Greensboro, High Point, Winston-Salem, and have built businesses in the Triad, the Triangle, Charlotte, Asheville, Wilmington. And so I know this state very well, and a lot of entrepreneurs come here, and sometimes they're a little apprehensive because it's not Silicon Valley or New York or what have you. But having hired hundreds of people in this state, there's an amazing entrepreneurial culture here, amazing technologists in this state. And for me to be here, it's a real honor. And on top of which, this is an amazing venue. I mean, we're in a former church here, and I mentioned this earlier, is that I feel like I'm in the house of Bitcoin. So it's like really cool, really beautiful venue. So thanks to Dan and Farouk. In terms of how I got started in Bitcoin, I think it's pretty interesting how Bitcoin appeals to people from different vectors, whether it's finance or technology or philosophy or regulation. It all kind of draws us in from different angles. My history came from a portfolio company of mine in Singapore that dealt with virtual currencies. So you were buying power-ups and trading different virtual currencies with other gaming platforms. And we came across Bitcoin in 2011. And when somebody says 2011, you're like, oh my gosh, what was the price in 2011? I didn't buy it in 2011. I wish I did. But it was very intriguing at that time. We were thinking, do we accept this kind of funny money dynamic in 2011? And wound up learning more and more about it. And it's much like like somebody telling you, oh, you have to try this awesome restaurant. And if enough people tell you about it that you know and trust, you wind up doing it. And so after that, I read Satoshi's white paper, and it's obviously very technical, but the abstract was interesting to me. And then I did have some background in the privacy software business, a company called Zero Knowledge Systems, which was a company Austin Hill founded in the late 90s. And Austin Hill is now the CEO of Blockstream, which just produced the sidechains white paper. And so all these intersections really got me, pretty far down this rabbit hole. And after kind of going through that process, you kind of realize that there's something special going on in Bitcoin and blockchain. And there's this, the more you read about it, that the ways in which this could reimagine the way Wall Street, the plumbing of Wall Street can be developed, the way you can help the unbanked. It's got this real profound, make a dent in the universe kind of dynamic, much like my initial kind of experience with a personal computer or a cell phone or the internet. You're kind of like, this is pretty profound. And if you transpose it on other industries and like the internet, automobiles, telephony, what have you, you feel like you're part of something that's on the front end of an innovative industry. So all that was extremely appealing to me, and literally stopped investing in other areas of technology and dedicated my platform called Tally Capital. It's an investment company, operating company. into this ecosystem. And so over the last 24 months, I've invested in just over 20 companies. A lot of the bridges, roads, and tunnels, so wallets, payment processors, miners. Bitfury is a portfolio company. They just, this week, became larger than the largest Chinese mining company, which is a big deal in the mining space. That's a big dynamic happening in mining. ChangeTip, which uses Bitcoin for tipping. Romint, which is in the payment space. Noble Markets, which 3 months ago announced a deal with NASDAQ, which is going through its BitLicense FunFest. And so a lot of these businesses that are kind of building out ways in which to onboard and engage into this ecosystem, as well as a lot of 2.0 companies as well, like Factum and a few others. Beyond that, been very active on a few nonprofits with the Chamber of Digital Commerce and with BitGive, and there's a lot of work to do in this industry, and I think it's a great time. You guys are in the right room at the right time. So on that, what's the dynamic in this room? There's a great question. Are you a Bitcoin skeptic or a Bitcoin believer? How many Bitcoin believers are there? Any skeptics? Okay, we don't have to kick anybody out, so we're good. Who owns Bitcoin? Okay, it's about 80%. Okay, good. So
very good. Well, I'm going to have to talk to you offline about those power-ups, because I was going to say that the virtual currencies, as I think another presenter said earlier, originally some legislation was around Second Life money or World of Warcraft gold or the rest of that. So that is, was that the space that you interacted with, or any of those kind of currencies?
Yeah,
before getting into Bitcoin?
Yeah, this was a social gaming platform out of Singapore that was one of the largest players in Southeast Asia. So you're always trying to optimize payment processing and what to do with this
even in a virtual world, right? Still got to optimize payment processing. Well, and one of the questions that we got that came in on the email was, where did you come up with the name Tally for your Tally Capital? And I, personally, I want to know that because my dog's name is Tally Ho. So so I thought, well, I was going to say Tally Capital. I love that name.
I love that name too. But if you want to appreciate the potential of Bitcoin, you have to kind of understand the history of money. And I think Wences from Zappo has got a lot of great vignettes on his perspective and the history of money. With respect to Tally, it comes from tally sticks, which in medieval England was used as a form of currency. So kind of in the 1100s, they literally used pieces of polished wood that were generated from stockbrokers. That's where we get the term stockbrokers. And then they were notched with pounds, shillings, and whatnot, and were split. And then if you got the short end of the stick, you'd owe me money. If I had the short end of the stick, I'd owe you money. That's where that comes from. And what I liked is that you have this cryptographic proof through nature, much like public and private key technology in Bitcoin. So that kind of fit well within this theme of Bitcoin and blockchain. And then England was built on tally sticks for about 700 years, and it was incredible to me. And then pretty soon the Bank of England said, we can't control these tally sticks, and let's kind of put the kibosh on that. And they wound up stopping the whole tally stick system and wound up burning them all in like late 1800s or mid 1800s, and wound up almost burning down the House of Parliament. So it's kind of an interesting, dynamic with that as well. So.
Well, I was going to say, so it wasn't the name of your cat, or?
No.
I was going to say that was a very comprehensive answer. I was like, wow, that's a lot. I was going to say you didn't just arrive at that name like pick one. Sometimes company names are. I think we had somebody else here go. They Googled a name that was available like with a .com, and that's the one we went with. So very good. That's very very interesting. So is there what's the one sector that you're most interested in? Bitcoin has a lot of, I would say, almost verticals. Is there any one sector in Bitcoin like that today? I mean, maybe it's different. Any one sector that you're most interested in today?
I think it's twofold. It's what interests me is one thing, and then what we need is another thing. It's like I still think we need better form factors for adoption. So a lot of the on-ramps, the wallets, the exchanges, the ATMs, all these form factors need to get better. It's for a lot of people getting onto to Bitcoin outside of this room. You tell your neighbor, your brother, your sister to buy Bitcoin. It's still relatively difficult. I think Coinbase is the best experience. I'm not an investor in Coinbase, but I think that's the most consumerized, convenient way to buy Bitcoin. But aside from that, it's in many ways, buying Bitcoin today is a scary proposition. So I always say it's like trying to fillet your own blowfish. If you hit the wrong gland, something's going to go wrong, and you might lose something. But beyond that, in terms of what's interesting, and for entrepreneurs getting into Bitcoin, you have to used to be innovative to be in Bitcoin. Used to be like that was the hot space. Now you have to be innovative within Bitcoin. So some of the areas that appeal to me are identity. I think identity. You heard this earlier with birth certificates and ways in which you stamp your identity and manage your own identity, and almost have this identity stack that can be enabled through the blockchain that you control. Because right now, you go to the store, give them a credit card, sometimes ask for your driver's license, and you're buying a stick of gum, and they have way more information than they should, right? And so this identity stack could kind of be permissioned and have these permutations where if you're buying alcohol, you're over a certain age limit. That's all they know is that you're over 21 or whatever. If you're getting a job, they have a different partition of your identity stack. If you're going to the hospital, if you're applying for a mortgage, and so that's all in your control versus throwing it out there and it being compromised with all the things that we see, basically.
Aren't we seeing that now with Visa going to tokenized transactions? That clearly the industry recognizes that this information, that the merchant has had access to a lot of information that then gets compromised. So I guess I would say that I think that the greater institutional have recognized that same thing since Apple Pay and some of the other ones are going to tokenized. Now the merchants, of course, don't like that, and they want to come up with their own network,
right.
Of course. But you're right, and as it pertains to Bitcoin, I think even better, a good way to be able to do that.
I think you're right on, and it's going to be a big battleground on me saying identity is a great white space. There's going to be a lot of players between incumbents and entrepreneurs trying to fight for that land grab, because I think it's a very important thing. On top of which, I mentioned control and privacy before. This allows us to now control how we engage with advertising marketers, because right now we throw our stuff on Google and Facebook, and then they make money on us and our profiles and what have you. But this is a way to really kind of invert that model where we set up the paywall. If you want to engage with me, it costs you $10 for me to watch that ad, or $100 for me to test drive that car, or whatever it is. And it really changes the dynamic in terms of who's in control of that access.
So what do you think of the concept of the Amazon versus Open Bazaar, where the Amazon has all the customer information, but the merchant does not? Do you think an Open Bazaar is one solution? I mean, there's other ones out there. Do you think that you see that catching on also as that same where the merchant wants to know their customer and has good reason to? You see that also progressing?
I see the Open Bazaar model as one of n number of models that will disintermediate the Ubers, the Airbnbs, the Facebooks, all that stuff will kind of follow that path. But those tools and plumbing's not been fully built out yet. But Open Bazaar is as a fantastic case study in kicking that off.
Right. So what do you feel, in your opinion? What are the obstacles? I know we've got a whole panel on mainstreaming coming up this afternoon. But in your opinion, has the killer app been developed yet? And if not, what do you think it will be that will bring this forward into the main space?
I don't see the killer app in front of us. At least it's not apparent to me. I've not seen it. I believe the killer app is upon us. If you look at the last 24 months of innovation in Bitcoin and blockchain, a couple things surfaced to me. One is multi-sig. It's a big deal in terms of securing Bitcoin wallets. At the same time, I don't think it's a company builder or a panacea. It's a feature. It's a very important feature. It's like double knotting your shoes. It's that kind of a thing, and it's going to be pretty much table stakes at this point. And then sidechains, which it can also be a very helpful in scaling the blockchain. But we're on the front end of that. We don't know what's going to be like. But in its full incarnation, having this constellation of chains that this gentleman were mentioning about, these intranets and extranets and these chains talking to each other. And I think there are going to be tons of private blockchains, and there's going to be ways in which they're going to check in and check out of public blockchains based on how they configure that and what they want to have stamped into a public blockchain, both for themselves and for the rest of the universe to look at. So I think that whole constellation, the interchain dynamics of the blockchain are going to be profound and going to continue to proliferate.
So the killer app is still elusive.
Well, it's still elusive. At the same time, you look at what's transpired in Bitcoin today. You get $1 billion of invested capital. You have human capital from Silicon Valley, DC, New York, all going into this ecosystem in droves. And then you have what's really been at least a surprise to me in terms of household name financial services companies, big tech companies getting into Bitcoin and blockchain. It's like every week you see Goldman Sachs, CBS, Barclays, Citibank, IBM, Samsung, Intel, all saying publicly that we have invested in this space. We've hired people. We have a working group. We're building out a strategy. And that's very different than it was 6 months ago.
Absolutely.
To my, a total surprise. And then on top of which, then you have like all the other financial services, big tech, Fortune 1000 companies that are doing the same thing, but aren't doing it publicly. There's not probably a CIO or CTO in Fortune 1000 that doesn't have a little post-it note on their desk that says blockchain. And I got to figure that out. I got to figure out what my blockchain strategy is, much like what my internet strategy was back in the mid to late 90s. It's of that type of consequence. And spending time with a lot of the financial services companies, household name guys, and women on Wall Street, they are very astute on what's happening here. You sometimes think like these household name companies are big, dumb, slow. They are slow, but they are very smart and astute on blockchain technology. To my surprise, so it's happening. But the time scales are a little different because even if you said, okay, I'm the CIO of a Fortune 1000 company, and I said, you know what, I believe this is the same thing I saw with the internet, and I'm going to take certain business processes or certain divisions or certain dynamics to cut costs or make things better, cheaper, what have you. And even if you had that green light and unlimited budget and total corporate buy-in, there's still a time lag between. And listen, even if they said, yes, I want to implement SAP or Salesforce.com, that's going to take several years to do, let alone blockchain, which a lot of the piece parts, a lot of the plumbing, a lot of the bridges are still getting built out. It's going to take some time.
Right. Well, and so how long is it going to, if you had to estimate before you'd see businesses, the mainstream businesses using blockchain technology? Or that's a loaded question, but how long do you think is that? 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? I mean, clearly it's coming, but when do you think we'll see it? Blockchain technology in the main business.
I think it's a great question, what the time scale is. I guess it depends. I guess if you look at somebody just stamping, mortgage applications or mortgage documentation onto the blockchain, that's much different than saying I'm going to settle, euro-dollar, swaps or something. It depends on the use case. I think a lot of the companies are going to use the simple, easy hits to get this rolling slowly, and maybe it's more of a timestamp notary to utilize the blockchain before they get into like trading, settlement, or what have you. So I think we're already seeing people using those solutions today. Versus saying let's throw Citibank on the blockchain tomorrow, which is
so you've dodged the time window pretty good so far.
So, yeah, no, I think but if
But it's
so
a
if
notary
you were in
function.
1995 and you said,
Yeah.
and you're doing, 2880 baud modems and the rest of it, and, you couldn't imagine what's happening right now, much like, what's happening with the blockchain. So, what I am seeing is momentum at a Fortune 1000 level that is, unprecedented. And that will, with capital, with entrepreneurs, with that kind of, let's face it, Bitcoin needed that kind of, notoriety or that kind of, branding because, the last, 10 headlines, again, ask anybody walking down, College Street here, what their thoughts are on Bitcoin. And it's like, well, the last 10 headlines were pretty bad. I'm not interested, and that permeated all the way up to a lot of companies in terms of their adoption or their internal discussions, and that's significantly changed.
Yep. Well, and we've only got a couple minutes left for our panel, so let me just go into something. So what do you think do you believe that the bit license, obviously that's going to be, whether we talk about stage or regulatory, New York is the first one to do it. So in your opinion, what's the outcome of the bit license in New York? How is, we've got people that say unfavorable, favorable, what's your opinion?
I think it's twofold. One is it's good that there's regulatory clarity to operate in New York, first and foremost. And investors don't like a lack of clarity. That's a big issue when they invest, and they invest in, let's face it, this is a highly regulated industry. It's called money, and so those dynamics are going to be very important for entrepreneurs to really chisel out and show that they have, compliance is a core competency, regulatory dynamics identified. And so in New York, it's been identified, albeit the bar is very high. It's a very expensive bar. And so what I don't like is that, there's companies that are going to be able to afford paying to get above that bar. But a lot of the innovation, a lot of the disruption, and a lot of the promise of Bitcoin is going to happen with folks in the garage. Right. And that's going to get stifled. And so if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to think about, what's the best jurisdiction now? And you never thought about this stuff. You're like, hey, I'm in a garage in New York. I'm going to just make stuff happen because you're building technology, you want to innovate. Now you're thinking like, well, is this the best place to start the business? And
or do I have to move my business?
Exactly.
In some of these, we were actually seeing some of them obviously relocate if they want to continue on their business model.
And there's two things there. One is that they're going to relocate, so jobs, innovation, funding, and
then all the growth and innovation happens somewhere else.
Yep, exactly.
Well, again, we've got I'm going to just take one more question because I want to make our panel, and you're around this afternoon as well, so I certainly want to talk to you. So of course, everybody got the popular one. What's the price of Bitcoin? Where is it going in the next couple of years? Your opinion?
In short, I think it's going to go up.
Okay, there you go.
But
everybody bought and buy.
my investment thesis in the space, despite investing in a lot of the companies here, about 2/3 of my dollars is in Bitcoin. So I'm a very long Bitcoin. I don't check the price of Bitcoin every day. I'm going to check it in 5-7 years. It's a long haul investment,
but do you think we're going to see? We've seen some stabilization in the 200 to 300. Do you think we're going to see another dip before it starts to go up? Or, short term, 1 to 3 years, do you think, are we still going to drift down? Or have we sort of stabilized maybe for a short period of time?
Again, I don't look at it as,
for yours,
as a trader. I look at it as, again, I've said this time and time again, it's one of the most mispriced assets I've seen in my career. It's a generational opportunity for entrepreneurs and investors. But why do I think that, right? It's like, why am I invested into this space? It's because you have this. So far, we've had this flywheel on miners mining Bitcoin, speculators buying, and this flywheel has kind of gone around and around, and it's kind of lost some steam. The fact that it's stabilized around 200 or 300 is interesting. But the utility of the blockchain, a lot of the transactions and throughput and utility and applications that are built on the blockchain are still kind of in motion. We don't have that killer app. We don't have enough volume happening, enough energy happening there, but that $1 billion of capital, the people, all that stuff is happening. That's the undercurrent that's driving that. So once this flywheel starts moving, the price of Bitcoin will obviously on a basic supply demand dynamic will improve dramatically. And so, you know, that's my piece. And I think it's again, a great time when it's, you know, the 2 to 300 is like the new $5 in my mind, because this is a long-term investment.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Matt. It was a pleasure. And